problem.
But you were fixing to tell me about something, I believe you said 1940, wasn't it?
Right. Well, my husband is just starting to write a report about 1940 in the Southwest, and because apparently Dulce was started back then with Nazis before we got into the war with Nazi Germany. So they had come to the United States. They were working with some Greys, and they started developing, building, whatever, however you want to call it, the base at Dulce. And what is fascinating is because different true cowboys and like Hollywood cowboys like Tom Mix were all actually also working for the government, and they were involved with, you know, like shootouts or fights. I know Tom Mix was involved with a big fight with some Nazis, and my husband's pretty sure that's how he died instead of the accident that's, you know, that's reported like in the news and on the internet and stuff. So he's just starting to write about that, and it's like fascinating because that's when Dulce started being developed way back when. So it's been there for a long time, and I don't think at the time our government was happy about it, but certainly over the years they allowed it to be there.
That's very interesting because it was the Nazis that came up with the first UFO, or their own flying saucer.
Right.
And they're involved with what is becoming known as an alien base that was probably, they could have well gotten technology from there to go into their flying saucer.
Right. Well, they did. And before that, in 1939, my father-in-law had gone to Germany at their invitation. I mean, he was actually going basically at the request of our president, but Germany invited him because they wanted him to defect and become a Nazi officer, which he had no intention of doing. But they showed him all kinds of secret stuff they were working on, including their flying saucer they were developing. And he took a lot of secrets out with him when he left before, you know, right as the war was breaking out. So, you know, stuff goes way back.
So then you would say there has probably been an extraterrestrial influence in many of the wars?
Well, I don't know totally about that, but they were definitely working with the Nazis. Well, I know the Nazis at least started working with them in the late 30s, 39. Definitely by then, maybe before that. But I don't know how involved they were with the war, but they were certainly sharing technology which, you know, could have enabled the Nazis to win the war had we not, found out about a lot of their secret stuff.
Now, let's see. When was the Holocaust exactly? Do you remember?
The Holocaust throughout World War II?
I mean, was that anywhere near the 1930s?
Well, that was just all I know is, you know, it's during World War II when all the Jews were being killed and other people.
I was just thinking about that because that seemed to be an interesting time span, a very active time span. I would have to Google it to make sure, but I know that somewhere in about 1933, a lot of the people that had mined for gold had their gold confiscated by the government, was never returned.
Mm-hmm. The Nazis took their gold?
Well,
is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying that our government did.
Oh, our government. Oh, really?
Confiscated it, said it was needed for war or something other, but then the thing was, it was never reimbursed to my knowledge. I've never been able to find a record of it.
Oh.
And then you got the Germans and the Holocaust going on somewhere in this general time frame, and the Dulce base thing going on, and I just can't help but sit here and wonder how much of that stuff's linked together.
Well, what I've learned, an interesting thing that Mark has pointed out to me is that the people that died in the Holocaust, millions, it's like they didn't recover like millions of bodies and things or remains and whatever, and I think it's highly possible that they were taken away. You know, they were taken to they probably had already started making deals. You know, they could have started making deals with aliens, you know, at that time, and were allowing people to be taken off world. And when we thought they were just being killed.
That's a good possibility. There's been people that's theorized before that Eisenhower or Truman, I think it was Eisenhower, had made a deal with the extraterrestrials, allowing them to, abduct humans in exchange for technology.
There have been deals for many years, and there's one of our mission reports where a team of our people had gone into Laos, I think. Yeah, and the villagers that there was an alien ship had landed, and there was a little skirmish there. But anyway, the people had told, because this is where the Plain of Jars is, the people had told them the aliens have been coming there for hundreds of years. And you see in caves and stuff, cave drawings and things of alien visitation. So they've been coming here for centuries. And there's biblical legends, and there's historical legends throughout the Middle Eastern cultures and things,
right,
of visitations and villages getting destroyed and monsters in the mountains, and so things have been going on for a long, long time.
Well, now that you mention it, I happen to be a pretty big proponent of the ancient astronaut theory.
Oh, cool.
And I've done quite a bit of study into this here, both online and in books, on TV, and actually talking to some of the authors here on my show as well. And I'm pretty familiar with that particular topic. And
wonderful.
And I do happen to know that there is good reason to believe that the actual kings back in the days of Egypt and Samaria,
right,
getting their instructions from extraterrestrials then, and not much appears to have changed over the millennia.
Oh, huh. Well, it's interesting because the first UFO expo I ever went to, I think it was 2004, Mark just said, why don't you go to that and see what it should be interesting. It's like, okay. And I was just beginning to learn his involvement with stuff. And somebody was giving a talk, and I don't think I listened to it, but about the Sumerian connection and all that. And they've been because I always go to there's a conference here in San Jose, and I always go to that. And I for the longest time I wondered, well, it's like, why are they? What's the connection there? Why are they even here at a UFO conference? And now that Mark has written a lot about Central Asia and the Middle East, I get it. And so there's been a lot of alien involvement there, and we have a series of reports, and I have a whole talk about that part of the world and what's going on and what's been there, and the legends and the stories that have come out of those areas. And the mountains in Iran are full of all that stuff. And the gate that Alexander the Great, supposedly was looking for was an actual very large dimensional portal. And that's what he found. It wasn't just some pass in the mountains. And there's all kinds of legends about monsters and things coming out of that part of Iran. It's fascinating.
Well, I know that William Henry believes that they had a Stargate portal way back in the days of the ancient Israelites, that he believes is described in the Bible. However, it's described as something else. It's a misleading type of thing. In other words, you couldn't really, pin it down. But he's done a lot of study into that. And I know there's other people that believe that Gilgamesh was buried not far from a Stargate or a portal of some sort. And, there's many legends of that coming around about it. I wouldn't just throw the possibility out the window. I'll put it to you that way.
Right. Well, and too, we have a map that I have in some of my reports that he's put X's on, especially in that Central Asia, Middle Eastern part of the world. There's a series of dimensional portals, and some of them, some of them are stable, but they're not all there all the time. So they can move about, and there are dimensional portals all over the world, but that particular report was about that part of the world, so that's what he was focusing on. But yeah, there was one in there's definitely a dimensional portal. At least there was one in Laos, and so it gets you to thinking. It's like, why were we really in Vietnam? Maybe it had nothing to do with the communists. I think we were trying to get control of something.
Do you happen to know if he had one incident anywhere near the Bermuda Triangle?
Yeah, there's definitely one there. There's definitely a portal there. I think Mount Shasta up here north of where I live has one, and that was a big Lemurian base. So It's amazing where they are. And they can change.
Okay, that leads into something else, too, though, that you probably are not aware of that I am.
Okay.
I've had an author on my show that has a book out called, I think it's Key to the Kingdom, 33. Well, it's either Longitude or Latitude 33, Key to the Kingdom.
Uh-huh.
And this is talking about, he believes that anywhere where Longitude 33 is at, or Latitude 33 is at,
right,
there is a ley line that runs there that is a good place for portals for other dimensions, in other words.
Uh-huh. That would make sense.
And like he believes...
Other people have mentioned the 33rd parallel, yeah.
Well, yeah, that there's a 33rd parallel, but he's also mentioned the fact that it's either Disney World or Disneyland. I keep forgetting which one. I get mixed up.
Disneyland.
King Arthur's Carousel. The King Arthur's Carousel.
Yes, I've mentioned that before. Yes. Somebody else has said that too.
He wrote on it extensively.
Uh-huh.
In fact, you can get his book for free, and I can send you the information after the show or over the weekend. I had to really kind of dig it up. I haven't had it in a few years.
Right.
I probably got the book on my hard drive, but you know how it is trying to find stuff on your hard drive once you get so much on it.
Right.
But, yeah, I can probably get that information to you. You might want to read the book because he's done some extensive research into this. He's got some interesting information.
Oh, good.
And I think it's something that you might really be interested in. And he said, and there's another guy, Sish Harry. He wrote The Handprint of Atlas.
Okay.
And he's also, he was the guy that provided a lot of the research for Walter that has really traced a lot of interesting places on longitude or latitude 33.
Uh-huh.
So there seems to be a lot going on with this here ley line in that particular longitude, latitude area, in other words.
Right.
And, you know, it could be that for centuries, even millennia, the ancient extraterrestrials knew these were portals and had them set up, because I know if you read Sitchin's Ancient Earth Chronicles in one of his books, he even mentioned the fact that the gods used to come talk to the priests of the day and would actually specify where their temples would go, what direction they would face, the whole 9 yards.
Oh, wow.
And if they were doing this, maybe that's because they were having these things erected smack on top of latitude 33.
Okay. Yeah, my husband knows a lot about ley lines, and I just know a little bit. But in a report that he's been writing, it's about some stuff that happened in May of 1978. Part of it, because another thing I share with everybody is that anytime he writes me a report for the nonprofit, he includes a ton of science and a ton of history and a ton of background information about the people involved that he's talking about. And he specifically did talk about the portal in the carousel at Disneyland. And just one of these last visits that we had, he, was mentioning that the Air Force basically was behind the building of Disneyland. It's like, oh, cool, no wonder you were there, right? The first day it opened. No wonder you were good friends with Walt Disney.
That's interesting because, see, he was making mention of the fact that he didn't believe Walt Disney was a Freemason, nor did he believe that Walt Disney was the guy that had the idea to put the carousel there at that location. But the guy that was working for Walt Disney, I think, as a designer or something, he mentioned his name. But again, this has been a couple of years, and I don't have it fresh in my mind. But that guy could have been connected to the Air Force as well.
Could be. The Air Force has been behind a lot of stuff, a lot of good stuff. So, yeah, and I don't know, and that was the first time he had really said that they were behind them getting Disneyland started and having it where it was and stuff. So, but so that was fascinating. Yeah, his family's had some really interesting connections, and it's always fun to hear about.
Yeah, you mentioned in your biography about Mark having interesting bloodlines. Does any of it date back to any of the Rothschilds or anything like that?
Well, basically, his main bloodline, if you go back a few generations, he would be a prince in Germany. But the family left, had to leave like 4 generations ago, something like that. So he has like royal ties, and so he's that sorry, stuttering today. Several generations of royal family connections in parts of Europe, that kind of thing, and big society names. Like one of his lines is he could be traced back to the Stuarts in England, and big names. Like one of his lines is the name escapes me at the moment. The guy that founded Rhode Island. So and his family is very politically connected on both sides, and his mother's side and his father's side, especially back in like Indiana and Illinois. His one grandfather, Grandfather Taylor, was going to be running for governor, and he was killed. But his grandfather Taylor rode with President Roosevelt in the Rough Riders, and he was actually one of the first MIB guys for our government. So Secret Service, and it's like they had those back then. So it's like, it's funny, they weren't just military, guys. But I have his saddle in the living room here, Grandfather Taylor's saddle that he rode with the Rough Riders.
I'm betting that if he was got that kind of lineage from the Stuarts, then he evidently must have some kind of knowledge on ancient astronauts himself, dating back to the family tree.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Because
he knows a lot of stuff.
The Stuarts, their lineage, there's people that theorize it goes all the way back to Cain.
Uh-huh. Yeah, he can pretty much trace his lineage way back, way, way, way back. So it's pretty amazing.
Well, then he should be in a position to know quite a bit.
He knows a lot of stuff. That's why he's where he's at, because he wanted to retire and they didn't want that, and they're afraid of what he knows or what he might say. And, they found whether they concocted the whole case against him or whether they just used it to their advantage. It's been used to their advantage for many years now, and it's been too long. So now we're sharing information.
It seems to me like, though, it's kind of odd that they would allow him to get information out through you.
Well, a couple things. Number one, he doesn't tell me stuff that would still be considered, U.S. security oath. He doesn't breach that, like I said. And the other thing is, if there's stuff he really, really, really shouldn't be telling me, or really, that people don't think should get out there yet, he doesn't. So, stuff that we do talk about, or that I talk about, some of it definitely is on the fringe, and they're not happy with it, but it's nothing they could arrest me for. But if he started talking about certain things, if he ever got out of state prison, he could be thrown in federal prison, and I'd never see him again. And I know when I went to England to speak, he was told that if I talk about this, this, or this, I'll be arrested. So I wasn't allowed to say maybe who in the English government was involved with their space stuff. I talk about it now on United States soil, but I certainly didn't mention names in England. But I can say it over here.
So then there's some stuff that you can get away with going over to Jerusalem and mentioning if you wanted to.
Yeah, maybe. But it was, and I could imply a lot in England, and I had a great time at the time. Bush was still president, so I had a great time. We all had fun bashing President Bush when I was over there. They liked that. They liked that a lot. So it was a really, and it was funny because England was my very first real speaking engagement, and they just took a leap of faith and had me come over there, and I spoke to both days of their conference, and it was wonderful. And what I don't have in my bio, which I should now add, is this last April of this year, I was invited to go to Philadelphia, and a friend of mine put on a whole one-day conference just for me to speak, and it was so exciting. It was wonderful because we had a crowd of about 100 people or so, and I spoke for 7 hours on and off with breaks and stuff, and we just got to go through a lot of the material that I have. And again, it just scratches the surface, because when you're talking about like 1 hour on each topic, you're just barely scratching the surface, because some of the reports that he writes are over 1,000 pages long on just the one thing. So he's quite a prolific writer.
So he lets you mail this, they let him mail this stuff to you, or he lets you pick it up while you're there visiting? Or?
No, I can't pick it up. He mails it out a few pages at a time, or on the occasions that he's allowed to mail out a box and send things, like when his cell gets too full of stuff and he's received a package, then he can send a bunch of stuff home. So he sends home a collection of mail that he's gotten, or articles that he's clipped for me to put in the files, and stuff that he's written for my reports and things like that. So yeah, he does get it out.
So I take it you got filing cabinets full of stuff.
The room I'm sitting in talking to you has a ton of filing cabinets, and then I have, when I first met him, he said he was writing this family history book, and it fills almost 3 file cabinets now.
3 file cabinets? That's quite a bit.
Oh, yeah, he just keeps going, because he's, it's about world history and political history and what was going on, and, what the family did and who they met, and how they were connected. And now he's going back and writing these more lengthy mission reports, which is actually, they're all part of the main manuscript, but they're perfect reports for me to share through my nonprofit, because they're about specific incidents. So it's basically now he's going back and filling in the juicy stuff.
Wow. Well, you got to figure, if he's got nothing to do in prison all day, every day, it's a pretty boring place, then writing's a great way to fill in time.
It is, and he's always been a writer, and he does have a job. So when they're not locked down, he does go to work, but he's literally a genius. So, I mean, he's so smart. He gets things done quickly. He types really fast, but he's constantly, he has several subscriptions. So he's reading all the time. People send him books. People send him research. He and I see each other pretty much every week, and we talk the whole time, and we're writing back and forth and talking back and forth. So it's not like he sits around watching TV, So he's constantly writing. He usually has 5 or 6 writing projects going on at any one time, and he manages to write me every day, among all those writing projects. So the man, I think I'm exhausted from everything I'm involved with, and he refuses to be idle, which is wonderful, because that's kept him sane for 30 years.
Have you thought about maybe compiling everything into a book?
Well, it would be a multi-volume book.
I would imagine.
Are you talking about the reports that I have?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, some of them, and part of the problem is they're not all typed, so I need to find a way to, take time off so I can keep typing them. Because they're handwritten, and I need them to be typed to really share them with the public. But I do have several reports that are available, and he is coming out with more that, sometimes he can type some of it. But, yeah, some of the smaller ones could go in a book. The bigger ones, it would just be a huge book. Because, like I said, several of the manuscripts are over 1,000 pages. And some of those, like the one, he's finishing up, he's working on a report about, I guess it was a big meeting in Exeter, England in June, I want to say like June of 1961. And I have a few hundred pages here, and he has over 800 altogether. And that's typed. So, they wouldn't be small books. But yes, we are trying to figure out better ways to get things out to the public.
I think if it was me, I would scan them with a scanner and then paste them to a text pad where you could just simply, highlight them and change the text to whatever style you want it to look like.
Yeah, I'm going to have to get one of those scanners, because my scanner is the 1 page at a time thing. So that isn't going to work for me. And it's not like I can.
Time consuming.
It would be, yeah, and I can't really give these out to somebody who's got a scanner, because I just don't let things out of my hands, at least the originals. So I do have one guy who was kind enough. He bought, a lot of the reports, and he did scan them, and so he was able to take, because Mark types double spaced, and so he was able to take out the double spacing. So I do have some, at least short, not he didn't take out the text, but I do have more condensed versions of a few of the reports, so that will help. But I need to do more of that.
Now, this material that he's been giving you to share, I guess from what you're describing, it spans everything from ancient astronauts up to modern-day UFOs?
Well, we have like the ancient stuff. We have 3 reports because he started with it when we went to war in Afghanistan. So he wrote a thing about Afghanistan and like some of the ancient history, how the Germans got in there, to lead you to surmise on your own, hopefully, that there were reasons we were in Afghanistan beyond the Taliban. And then all of a sudden that war ended. So we have also another report that goes, it's called Secret Bases, and it goes into like the ancient history up to World War II on all this history of alien activity in that part of the world, the Central Asia, Middle East stuff. And then the latest one he sent me was about the mountains in Iran, the Zagros Mountains, and all the legends that tie into that, and then sightings, even modern day sightings of monsters and things going on, because while we're in Iraq fighting, there was stuff going on in these mountains in Iran that people really didn't know about. We thought maybe, oh, the Kurds are fighting the Turks, but there was really other stuff going on. And somebody, and I'd have to look at the report, but somebody interviewed like a villager or whatever and said, oh, no, there's like basic monsters, coming and taking our women and our sheep and stuff. So while we're fighting in Iraq, there is stuff that we were dealing with in the mountains of Iran. And again, that is also the site of a huge, very stable dimensional portal. The other reports that we have, or that I started out with, there was an incident, it was kind of a dual mission. Part of the thing was happening down in the South Pole with Nazis and reptilians. Part of something, there was a space battle over China. That was in July of '76. Then in '77, there's a space battle with aliens because they attacked our base on the moon, and then they were going to invade Earth. So we had to deal with that. And then you'd think there was a break, but no, it's just a break in the reports, because now he's telling me about 1970. They never really had a break all these years. And then I have stuff from 1979. There was a space battle out near the asteroid Vesta. There was an invasion fleet coming. And right after they got back from that was the incident he was involved with at Dulce. And then we back up, and I have a report. He doesn't send me things in chronological order, which is fine, but I have a report of like a conference that was here near San Francisco in Marin County where I live, July 1970. So like the year after we landed on the moon publicly, there was an alien-human conference talking about, well, we really don't want you going back out in space, la, la, la. So that was 1970. And then 1978, there was a crash in Bolivia that they had to deal with. And so things have just been constantly going on, and it's amazing. And, then like 1961, I mean, he was a kid, but he was at this meeting, and he was meeting other aliens' kids. And he's talking about, they met some oceanics, and he was meeting the kids of this reptilian that he knows. And there was what is it called? Is it a gastrocell? There was like a gas based alien. It was friendly, but it had come, and then it has to be inside a bubble, and and it was giving us information. So he's seen this stuff ever since he was a little kid and been involved with it since a very young age. It's just fascinating.
Okay, so I would. Time I've gotten bumped out of Blog Talk Radio.
Wow.
And I just tried to call in, and my listener could hear it. It didn't want to take my PIN number for some reason at first. Now, listen, we got 14 minutes remaining on this show, and I do have the ability to extend. However, I'm not certain that would not maybe be more headaches than it's worth, since Blog Talk seems to be having issues today. We might do better to reschedule after they fix their problems, whatever it is, than to keep fighting this phone system.
It's funny. I mean, I've had different things tamper with my technology, but nobody's usually like cut the radio interview off. You know, you can often hear them like bugging your thing or like beeping in and stuff, but nobody's actually cut you off. It's like, oh, somebody must not be happy I'm talking today.
I've had a couple people in chat say that they couldn't hear,
Uh-huh.
and one say that they got bumped out.
Oh, isn't that interesting?
That's why I said I think Blog Talk Radio is having some kind of string trouble or coding trouble or something, and that's why I don't think it would really benefit us to extend the show because we'd probably end up getting cut off again.
Isn't that funny? And what's funny, too, is because all my recent interviews and the ones I have coming up are all through Blog Talk Radio hosts.
Oh, well, they fix it pretty quick when they have a problem like this.
Yeah.
So, probably we come back again in next week or the week after, it'll probably be fixed. It might even be fixed by Monday. I would not expect it to be fixed by tomorrow because it's the weekend and they're probably off.
Well, if anybody wants to email me, I know you gave them my website. So my email is ecochicks and the website. So it's ECOCHICKS at edhca.org. And I'm happy to receive questions and things like that. And I do have DVDs of all the talks I gave in Philadelphia in April. So that really gives people more of an overview of what we talk about.
Well, how many DVDs do you have?
Well, I have one specifically that was the talk I gave in Sedona at Ed Grimsley's conference last year, and then the DVD set of the Philadelphia thing. It has 3 DVDs, but it has 7 talks on it. So it's several hours worth of talking. And then Halloween weekend, I will be in San Jose at the Bay Area UFO Expo. I'll have a booth there. So if anybody's in this area and they're listening, I'd love to meet them.
I am so glad you mentioned that because I didn't even know it.
Oh, yeah. I think it's their 12th year. So it's Halloween weekend at the Fairmont Hotel in San Jose. It should be a lot of fun.
And I'm also going to have a Halloween special with Linnea Lee and Victor Rossetti, the guy that did the voice at the beginning of my show for Paranormal Palace Radio.
Oh, good.
And Sean Bellakarov. We're calling this a Halloween to remember. It should be dismember. But I just wanted to throw that in there while you're mentioning Halloween events coming up because let's face it, everybody has something going on at Halloween.
Right. That sounds like fun.
But I would personally love to get my hands on some of those DVDs and hear those myself. You got a lot of information. It sounds like you got some very important information out there.
Thank
you. We didn't really even have time to scratch the surface, I don't think.
I know. Yeah, an hour just never does it. And I could talk for days, as most people have found out. So.
Well, I'm going to talk to you later on after the show or over the weekend, maybe Monday, about coming back because I think we probably might want to set up a recurring show to get to all of these as soon as Blog Talk gets its bugs fixed.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Love to do it.
During the last 10 minutes, though, now would be a good time before something happens again. If there's any pertinent information that you want to get out that you don't want to wait until we can get you hooked back up.
Well, let's see. Well, the one thing, there's a couple things. One thing that we always, our point of all this is to share information that isn't readily available in history books, and it's not what most people on the UFO researcher circuit talk about because we have the military history. So a lot of people, I'm not saying nobody has, but I'm just saying a lot of people don't seem to come from that perspective because a lot of them were not in the military. So I'm thrilled to share stuff that's right out of, military history, and obviously it's not stuff that's been readily shared. And it's been fascinating because while it's a bit scary to realize that all this was going on under our nose, and I can think of, what I was doing in 1976 while they were saving the world, and I can think of what I was doing in 77 when they were saving the world, and I'm probably glad that I didn't know about it then But I'm really grateful to my husband that he and his father and many, many, many people like them were involved with doing that. And many people died, and it wasn't pretty, and many, people on both sides. So there's, in the report we have about the Harvest Moon and the battle in 77, I mean, he describes in a paragraph or two the horrific battle, and in 90 seconds it's over, and lots of people and aliens have died, and they're just, it's just horrible. But on the other hand, he's also described going through a wormhole and what that's like. So it's like, how cool is it to be able to, hug this man that's gone through wormholes? How cool it is to know that science. And I've learned so much on just basic science that I could never get in a physics class. I mean, he has several degrees, and one of them's quantum physics, and he could just go on and on and on, and it's fascinating. So there's a lot of cool stuff out there that I'm enjoying sharing. At the same time, we want people to ask questions, and we want people to understand that, there's right under our noses, the government is allowing scary things to happen, and it's not all good. And, there are reasons why we are still in Afghanistan and Iraq and that part of the world, because there's, unhappy things happening. And a lot of people are dying, and a lot of people are disappearing, and it isn't all because of military operations over there. Well, I guess it is military operations, but they're not going to tell you what kind. So there is stuff going on under our nose that they're not sharing, and they're not going to share because they believe you can't handle it. But I believe with all my heart that stuff's still going on. Why would it stop?
Well, I'm not 100% sure that's the only reason they're not sharing.
Right, yeah.
But, whatever the reasons may be, it's obvious there's quite a bit that's not being shared. And there's already been quite a bit that was later on discovered.
Right.
So, everything's coming out little bit by little bit. You got Robert Hastings. He's coming forth with all of his witnesses to the nukes that were that have been shut down by UFOs. You got Alex Weber coming forth along with Eisenhower's daughter about other programs that was going on.
Right, right.
And you got Andrew Faggio. He's coming forth with the
I'd like to talk to him.
Life on Mars.
Right. And see, Mars is one thing Mark will not talk about. So I know something's happening, because that is one program he won't talk about, only because he must have been involved somehow. Because if he can't and won't, he just smiles, but he won't talk about Mars. So I know there's something going on there.
So, you got all kinds of people finding out all this information, and they're bringing it forward. In fact, in the near future, I'm going to have Leslie Keene on, and she has a book out that's full of military officers coming forth telling their stories. Much like you're doing with your husband.
Right,
so,
right.
Your husband is not the only one
that's,
putting it out there. There's military personnel all around the world, and they're all coming forth at the same time.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, hopefully they're not going to end up in prison.
Well, I'm pretty sure they've got a way to cover themselves, because, once you get it out on the air and it gets broadcast around, there's not a lot of reason to imprison you. You closing the barn door after the horses escaped. It's a little bit
right. Right. Well, and it's interesting, too, because, they've done a really good job of discrediting my husband and ruining his reputation. But, people have to realize, he knows a lot of stuff. He knows who killed Kennedy. He knows secrets that go way back. Like I said, both of his grandfathers were involved with Tesla. He knows what happened to Tesla's black books. He knows a lot of stuff that the government would either like to get its little knowledge on, or it would like to make sure he never shares. And a lot of that he'd never intend to share, and he would have never intended to share anything if he hadn't been in prison so long. But, on the other hand, he's really not happy that basically his country basically betrayed him, because they couldn't come to his defense and say, oh, excuse me, he was working for us. He couldn't possibly have been in Marin County doing this murder. But they can't say that. They can't admit who would have been an active agent for them at the time. They couldn't say it now. They can't say it. They couldn't say it then. They can't say it now. So.
Well, how long is he due to stay in there for life?
He has a life without parole sentence. So I'm working on a few strategies, but they're definitely an uphill battle. But I won't give up hope. But we're getting up there in age, so.
So they wanted to make sure that he never saw the light of day again.
Pretty much. And I don't. And the thing is, people go, well, what happened? Why haven't they just killed him? And I said, well, because he has, and this was put in place way before he ever met me. He has ways to get the information out there if he ever gets killed in prison. So they have reasons that he's better off alive. But I mean, this is a horrible punishment to him. He can't see kids, he can't see grandkids. I can only see him, once a week, and if they move him to farther places in the state like they have before, it's once a month. Fortunately, we write every day. We talk every now and then on the phone, not too much, but this is torture. This is a man who's used to being out and busy and active and, busy.
So they're playing a musical inmate with him.
Yeah, he has moved all over the state, pretty much.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Any idea why they're moving him so much?
Well, partly probably to mess with him, but partly it's because, maybe the prison, their mission, like for all of a sudden now they need to house mostly protective custody people, so they have to move inmates other places. So, it's mostly you get moved as a group. Not too often does he get moved just by himself. But fortunately, over a year ago, he was moved back closer to, he's by Sacramento, which is only a couple hours away from me. And that was just a weird fluke. It was a really nice miracle fluke because we weren't counting on him getting moved because they were saying, we're not moving anybody. And especially not just to make it easy on you. So I'm happy that he's only 2 hours away. Yeah. So, they have all their reasons. And we could spend a whole another 2 or 3 sessions on how bad the prison system here is.
I've never been in the big house penitentiary, but I was in the city jail for, that little penmanship I had once upon a time.
Yeah, I could go on and on. The California prison system is one of my pet peeves now, and I've learned way more than I ever wanted to know about it. But, I'm not a super activist for prison reform, but I'm in contact with my local politicians about it and keeping them informed of, what's going on and you should be doing this and, this is the kind of bill you should be fighting. Because our prison system here is so overcrowded that my husband beside is just a mess and it's, killing the state budget, but yet they're always the ones who hardly get any budget cut. And, I could go on and on about how bad it is.
Well, we got 1 minute remaining, so we don't have time to go into it right now.
Okay, yeah, right.
I'll wrap it up real quick with saying that I happen to know it was on 2020 that they were releasing inmates that's so overcrowded.
Yeah, it'd be nice.
That was like 4 or 5 years ago I saw that.
Well, they're supposed to, but they haven't.
At any rate, I've got 56 seconds remaining. I wanted to tell you it's been a pleasure having you on here, and I really enjoyed this, and I just regret that we've had the technical issues, but unfortunately with technology, you only got so much control over it.
Exactly.
So, but yeah, I'm going to definitely be in touch, and I want to get you set up on a recurring show to give you a chance to get all this information out.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you.